All right, guys, welcome to Earth-Centric Lighting Podcast, all about lighting here. Today we have our guest, Andrew Miller from QNORTHWEST. He is the director and they do AV integration. And Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Travis, for having me on. It's great to be here today. I work today primarily in technology systems and services, which is kind of a broad descriptor, but really focused on building systems. So commercial building systems and luxury residential systems. So systems would include things like network, audio, video, window coverings, surveillance, security, access control, the control systems that tie all those together. And then, of course, kind of what we're focusing on today, lighting and lighting control. We do a lot. That's a kind of a daily bread and butter thing for me. So my background, I started in electrical and spent about 6 years exclusively in electrical. A lot of commercial and some luxury residential, and then shifted into technology, which is where I've been for about 30 years now. So still dabble in electrical, but spent a lot of time coming up with the right solutions for people who are trying to live lives, whether it's work life in a commercial building or raise a family and live life at a nice residence. So that's kind of my world, and so a little about me.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I love it. So, so you've been in this industry for a long time, and then as far as AV integration goes, they've how long have you guys been doing lighting control? Because that's a really important piece as far as you think about it. You're putting this whole system together with security, audio, TV, and sound, and now you guys are doing lighting control. That's I think it needs to be in that section at least to have it all be controlled from like say your smartphone or an app or a central hub or something like that. How long have you guys been getting into the lighting control side of it?
Yeah, so I first worked on lighting control in 1996, so almost 30 years ago. And at the time, lighting control was not uncommon in commercial. It was extremely uncommon in residential. Most homes in the 90s still had standard switching on the wall. Occasionally, you had a dimmer for the dining room chandelier and maybe one or two other loads. The very first lighting control systems in residential occurred in really 89, maybe 90. And they really were commercial lighting control systems that typically executives experienced in their commercial buildings, like high rises. And they liked the idea of being able to push a button and have many lights fade to preset levels with just a single button push. And they said, I want that in my house. So the early systems um, were actually commercial systems brought into residential applications. And then really mid 90s is the first time we saw lighting control really take root in residential. But commercial lighting control has really been around since on a broad spectrum in the 70s. And the other demand for commercial lighting control is that in the 90s, energy codes really emerged for the first significant time. California being dominant there, and then that spread across the US, where if you build a commercial structure of any type, whether it's a school, hospital, office building, government installation, and retail, typically energy codes required a lighting control system to utilize daylighting and then occupancy control. So if the space was unoccupied, the lights weren't on. And the early impetus for lighting control was really back pre-LED, which is what everything we have today. But back in the 90s, 2000s, it was incandescent, halogen, high intensity discharge lighting, and a lot of fluorescent. Fluorescent was considered a major energy saver, but it still used quite a bit of energy. So there was a lot more consideration for just turn the lights off or dim them down and save that energy. Today, LED is such a low usage relative to 25 years ago, it's not as much of a consideration, but those codes do still remain. So
That's funny. I'm just sitting here listening. Your brain is like an encyclopedia. You can bring up all the information. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that going through the classes, but you can bring it right on the spot there. And it's very, very technical, and everything you're saying to me makes sense. But maybe for those who are listening and maybe don't even really know what lighting control is, what's like a simple way for them to like understand kind of some basics? Like
sure.
for example, too, like say they go to the box store and they see lighting control, and then what's like, I guess two-part question. How does it kind of work, the lighting control? What is it simply? And then like what is the difference between like Q Northwest and like those other lighting controls they probably see? Because there's a big difference. I know it, but then they probably don't understand it. So
Sure. So I think from this point, unless you ask me to, I'm going to focus the context of my conversation mostly around residential. So
yeah,
even though a lot of these same things do apply in commercial, but they kind of are two different worlds. We're trying to do different things. In commercial, it's really about occupied buildings that are being used for tasks and functions, whether it's a classroom or people working in office spaces or having meetings in conference rooms or performing operations for patient care in hospitals. In residential, it's really more of a curated. We talk about lighting control really as a solution for curating lighting to lifestyles. We'll probably come back to that later. So I'm going to answer your first question. So again, just in the context of residential, what is lighting control? Well, let's talk first about what lighting control. At the end of the day, lighting control in its simplest form is controlling a light or a group of lights. And I guess to a certain extent, you could say that all homes have lighting control because everyone has at least switches on the wall where you walk over and you hit the switch and the down lights turn on, or a pendant turns on, or an outside light turns on and off. But more commonly in the industry, lighting control refers to a system where instead of walking around and individually turning on every light or group of lights, you connect those lights to a brain of some type or a hub. It's called different things depending on the system. And that hub allows you to turn on multiple lights or multiple groups of lights. And you can do some other nice things like automate, like, one of the common requests is, I don't like having to remember to turn my outside lights on and off every day. So if your outside lights are connected to a system, they can turn themselves on automatically a half an hour before sunset, and they can turn themselves off at sunrise automatically. But lighting control typically refers to connecting those lights intelligently somehow to a brain or a system that provides some elevated levels of control and convenience for a homeowner or an occupant. So pushing a button and all the lights, instead of having to push a lot of switches, push one button and a lot of lights fade to a level that you've predetermined, that type of thing. So lighting control is, we'll get into some more layers of why lighting control, but on its simplest form, it's just a system where the lights are intelligently connected and controlled. And there's lots of manufacturers today that make lighting control systems, and they're really designed with different purposes in mind. So different size homes. So if you're in a 3,000 square foot home, you might use a different system than if you're in a 9,000 square foot home. So some of it is the kind of how we differentiate between systems is what's the size of the project, what kind of lights are a part of the project, what are we trying to accomplish? Those are some common questions. So now I'll take your second part of the question, which was how does what you might see in a box store differentiate from what we might provide? So today, unlike the 90s and early 2000s, lighting control systems and really technology systems are very common. Anyone can go on Amazon or to Home Depot or Lowe's or any other box store, and you can purchase DIY oriented lighting control solutions. So a lot of homeowners may say, I want to put my outside lights on an automated schedule. So they might go to Amazon or Home Depot and just change out that common standard electrical switch for a intelligent switch or an intelligent dimmer. And likewise, they may say, I want to be able to dim the lights in my living room for when we're watching TV or hanging out and having a beverage of choice. And I want, so I want to have a couple of scenes. I want to have my bright scene. I want to have my relaxed scene. I want to have my TV scene and my late night scene that's really just night lighting. So that can be done by homeowners or DIYers very simply. Just pick up the components that are available at big box stores and change out some switches, and you have a system. What we more commonly work on professionally are larger systems or more complex systems. So today, lighting was fairly straightforward a long time ago. Incandescent bulbs, halogen bulbs. Today, we work with LED, and in incandescent bulbs, you could dim the bulbs. Let's just talk about some of these technologies and how the evolution of them. Incandescent bulbs, you could turn them on full blast and it'd be pretty bright white light, crisp white light, or halogen bulbs. And if you had a dimmer, you could dim them down and they would get yellower and softer typically as you dimmed them down. When LED bulbs first came out, they functioned a little bit differently. So where instead of changing the color of the light from more yellow and warm to crisp and white as they got brighter, LEDs typically early on were the same color, whether they were bright or dim. So you didn't have that transition. And today, LEDs have advanced. We're many generations along in the world of LED lighting technology. Today, we have the ability to replicate changing colors or temperatures of white or what we experience as white light. So we can experience a crisp white or a very warm white. And LEDs add in the ability to do some colors, which is pretty neat. I mean, we didn't really have, you never saw colored lighting in homes. And today, a lot of folks go out and buy like a Philips Hue system to backlight their TV. It's pretty cool. But today we can do some really interesting effects with lighting that were not really an option back in the day of incandescent halogen bulbs or fluorescent. So a layer beneath that is how LED bulbs work. They're really electronics. I mean, they're not a filament like an incandescent bulb or halogen where they're in a gas-filled glass enclosure. LEDs at their core are a bunch of electronic components, almost kind of the same kind of stuff we build computers out of, or TVs or cell phones. And so how we get those LEDs to do different things can be somewhat complex. So that's where we come in, is that especially in larger projects or projects where we want to take the available technology of an LED bulb or LED lighting, and we want to create some immersive experiences. That requires a level of expertise, someone who really knows the world of modern lighting and how you could connect to the system, and then make it all work seamlessly for a homeowner. Because a homeowner, no one, myself included, has time to pick up a smartphone or a tablet and every day try to program or adjust these complex LED lighting systems. What people want is they want very simple, easy to understand, easy to use, intuitive systems. I mean, it's not just lighting, but it's also their audio and their, their TVs and their cameras. People want simple things in life. They don't want complexity in life. They don't want things that represent pain and challenge and difficulty in life. And so a lot of what we offer as QNORTHWEST is a working knowledge and a depth of experience in technology systems and the ability to listen well to a customer about what their priorities are and offer suggestions for providing a simple solution that enhances their life and brings a higher quality of life using the technology that's available today. So,
Yeah. And I would like to probably add there, because like you say, you're taking a very complex situation and you guys are the ones that are making it very simplified for the client. That way it works well and you guys can help go in and commission that so it works the way that they want it to, right?
right.
Because like as a lighting designer myself, when we design light, there's lots of layers of light. And then you guys are coming in and you're going to make sure that those controls work in all those layers are creating different scenes to create that experience. And a lot of the times, I know there's people listening who probably don't know, but there's a lot of different, there's wireless, there's like the hub, there's maybe dolly, maybe there's 0 to 10 volt. That's different types of technologies that you need to run in the walls, maybe if it's not wireless, so it can communicate back to these devices. And you guys are making sure that all those layers are turning on together and coming on and being coded right to at the right amount. And it's a lot of work and a lot of detail. And you guys are helping like get the client what they want and making it very simple for them. So that way it can look really nice, because if they're spending so much money on this home and let's say they do lighting design, but they just opt out for controls, then what does that look like is for their home?
Well, it looks like two things. One is that let's say that you have a 5,000 square foot home. That's not an insignificant home.
Hmm.
If you don't have any system, you're going to have a couple of things. One is you're all day long, you're going to be walking around and turning on switches that are in the wall, perhaps dimmers, but you're going to have banks. So if you take like a great room or a living room, you're typically going to have some downlights. You might have a decorative pendant or a chandelier. You may have some cabinet or casework lighting. You may have some art lights. You may have a fireplace light. And so each one of those is going to have a switch in the wall. So all day long, you're going to be walking around turning those switches or dimmers on. And if they're switches, they're just on or off. There's no ambiance. It's just full light or no light, which is okay for, I want to be clear here, not everyone needs or is the right fit for kind of what we're talking about today. Some folks are I think it's my experience in the industry, it's a smaller number of people, but there are people that just want full light or nothing. And so, and I support that. I mean, it's the really the goal here is to provide the right solution for the client. And everyone's different. We're all unique in our how we experience life, our priorities, our lifestyles, and so, but a lot of people would appreciate the ability to, at a minimum, dim the lights. And then with a lighting control system, instead of a bank of lights, so you walk around this 5,000 square foot home and all day long you're turning lights on, off, on, off. Before you leave the house, you got to remember to turn all the switches off. And less of a concern with bulbs burning out today, more of just an irritant that just lights left on, whether it's kids' rooms or someone forgot in the laundry room. So what lighting control does is it takes that bank of switches and it reduces it down instead of 6 switches lined up on the wall, especially in these, today everyone's into these open concept builds. That's like 90% of homes are built with open concepts. You have dining, living, kitchen, all connected, often to an entryway or a hallway, sometimes to a breakfast nook. So you have this big space, and in the big open space, it's not uncommon to have 20 controlled lights or groups of lights or more. So that's 20 switches. And if you say, hey, I can enter the great room from 2 different points, well, each point's going to have banks of switches. It's a lot of switches. So you have this kind of clutter on the wall as well. The aesthetically get all
I've
these
heard it. Yeah, I've heard it been called wall acme.
wall acne. That's it. So there's a pain point there in that all day long, we don't, I mean, I think that a lot of folks have just adjusted to it because we don't think about it. We assume we've lived so long. So a lot of people have lived just assuming that, well, I have to walk around and turn all the lights on and off. What lighting control does is it takes those banks of switches and it reduces them down to a simpler control. So you might have some buttons now instead of switches, and the buttons would have names that the client has selected and approved that makes sense to the client. A lot of clients today like the idea of just buttons that say bright. I just want to make it bright,
Mhm.
relax, or soft, or dim. Um,
But you
and
can also do like entertain, right? And you can do uh evening. So that way it all comes on maybe at the evening. So the overhead lights dim down to like 10%, and then maybe the accent lights kick on so you're not waking your body up, right?
yeah,
And then maybe during the day you press the day button, kind of intuitive like that as well. You can kind of custom what you want to put on there, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 100% custom, and the goal is that whatever the buttons say makes sense to that particular client. That's a really important component because one client may say, "Look, I really like, vibe, entertain, party on, interesting names," and other clients may say that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand that. So the names are always selected for what makes sense to the client. And the intent there is if you take that same open space, the kitchen, great room, dining room, with that maybe 20 switches in multiple banks, you reduce all the control down to just these elegant buttons that, with a single button press, the lights throughout that entire connected space fade to the look that you want or that makes sense for perhaps a relaxed scene. A lot of working families, or families that are raising um, young people, prefer time of day oriented naming conventions like morning, afternoon, evening, late night. And the reason is that family routines tend to be oriented around time of day. In the morning, it's about get the kids up out the door for school, breakfast ready, and then maybe some housework. And then the afternoon, kids are coming home. We got homework going on, school activities, dinner prep, and then once we get through dinner, we're into this evening where we can kind of start to wind down or downshift a bit. So for a lot of folks, having a button that tracks with their lifestyle routines for a typical day can make sense. But the idea is whatever the buttons say, all the lights fade up or down to
Mhm.
the look that the client wants, that makes sense to them. So what is the question would be, what does an evening scene look like to you? Do you generally like it brighter, softer? Do you really want your art highlighted? Do you want your beautiful chandelier kind of brighter, just so you can look at it? What makes sense to you when we say entertain? Is that very bright or is it soft and relaxed? So that gets adjusted, and then the beauty is that every time you walk up to that button, there's no more hitting 20 switches. You just push a single button, and every time you get that same effect. So
And then, so you're taking these. So for those who maybe don't know, we're talking about the switch on the wall, just a single gang. Maybe sometimes there's a four gang plate for all banks of four switches, and maybe a double gang underneath it. That would be a set of six. And then it condenses it all down into one single gang switch. So it makes it look a lot nicer. And there's probably four, maybe six buttons on there with these labels on it. You condense it right down into that, and it gives it, and it looks really nice. It's not like a typical wall switch. It looks really clean and really elegant. And then so then this home, it can adjust automatically throughout the day, but the buttons are manual override, correct?
yeah, it can. So the automation component, let me speak specifically to that. Sometimes makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. Some clients, in my own home, we've selected like what the look we want for the afternoon, the evening, and the late night in our common open spaces. And every day, let me pause here. So we talked earlier about the reason you might consider a lighting control system because it might make life simpler and easier in quality of life. So what does that translate into? That's kind of a cool catchphrase. But what it really means in a pragmatic home is that the lights are the look that you want. They're on at the levels that you want with less effort from you, the resident of the home. Meaning that if you have no system, you spend a lot of effort every day walking around switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off in all these different spaces. So you're hitting, just thinking about the pragmatics of it, you're hitting maybe 50 switches in a day in a 5,000 square foot home. Maybe just for convenience, you never turn some lights on because there's too much of a bother. I don't want to walk over there and turn that light on. I just don't have time for that. So the convenience is lighting control says, hey, we can reduce that effort from hitting 50 switches down to now maybe you're hitting 5 or 10 keypad buttons max throughout the day. Now let's take it a step further. If you say, my open connected space, my great room, dining room, kitchen, we're usually home in the afternoon and we usually want the lights on in that space. You can say to the system, hey, I've got my afternoon scene. It's on a button that says afternoon, but let's go a step further. I just want that afternoon scene to run automatically every day at 3 p.m. or every day 4 hours before sunset. I want that afternoon scene to kick on. So and the system would automatically adjust for the time of sunrise, sunset throughout the year. So now the lights are on in the afternoon, the look you want that the homeowner has decided, and they didn't have to push any buttons. Well, now that's pretty simple, and that represents a quality of life where you didn't have to hit 50 switches. The lights were just magically where you wanted them, and perhaps a half hour after sunset, the lights fade to the evening scene, and maybe at 10 o'clock they automatically go to the late night scene. So now we're talking about you hit no buttons, and that open area uh, turned itself on, and it shifted through several different looks of bright, active to relaxed to really kind of dimmed down for late night. And you didn't have to hit any buttons. Well, that really represents a quality of life. The lights are just always where you want them, and you don't do anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like it's really convenient for the client and making it a high quality of life, like you say. And also, I'd say to me, I love this aspect of I'm always big on mimicking the sun because that's what we've evolved to the last 300,000 years. It sounds like you're turning the interior environment almost into like this luxury comfort space that's very convenient and a nice quality of life, but it's also kind of aligning almost with your biology in a way that will help get your body ready for sleep. And then it's brighter the way you want it during the day for when you're trying to work and do those types of things and be productive. And you want that bright light. And then in the evening, it kind of dims down a little bit. It sounds really amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'll touch on that briefly before I move off of the convenience and controls. Some of the other things that are ancillary, but they are also quality of life, is the convenience of it. We talked about leaving lights on, which happens a lot in homes that don't have light control. Kids' rooms are constantly being left on, and just lights are on all the time. Um, if you have a system in the garage or your main point of exit from the house, you just put a button that says house off. When you walk out of the house and you're the last one out, you just hit that button, and all the lights that are on the system turn themselves off. It's a one button press without having to walk the house and make sure the lights are off. And they're off, which is it's just super convenient. The Yeah, there's a couple of other things that are convenient, but let's talk a little bit about the biology. So, and part of what we spend our time at QNORTHWEST, well, LEDs have gotten pretty smart. They're electronics, and they have the ability. And you're exactly right. Our bodies are engineered such that the sunlight, natural light, informs our bodies throughout the course of the day. So as the sun comes up and it gets brighter, initially it's pretty warm, and especially once we move towards midday, the color of that sunlight is cooler. It has a lot of blue in it, and it's very vibrantly white. And that vibrant white light informs our body that it is the active part of the day. It's part of what gives us a sense of energy, or that it's a time to be energized and to be active and to be productive. So whether that's work or yard work or accomplishing the tasks of the day, that midday sun informs our body naturally that um, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And then as the sun starts to set, it gets warmer and softer, and we naturally feel more relaxed. It's really, the sun is really telling our bodies to prepare for rest, prepare for sleep. It's time to prepare to wind down the day. So with it's important to know, I'm really glad you brought that up, um, that the sun, that's what the sun is engineered to do, or what our bodies are engineered to respond to. It's part of our biological makeup.
Absolutely. It's like one of the best supplements that you don't have to take is that works, I think, in my mind better than anything is light because your body releases those natural hormones and neurotransmitters that naturally make your body promote levels of wakefulness and productivity during the midday and the high, and then, melatonin at night. If it's off at night, and or dimming to those real warm levels, um, I think it's really, really good. And a lot of people aren't aware of that because, like you say, well, I'm saying this, the electric light bulb was only invented 150 years ago. And as you were saying, the technology has advanced and advanced and advanced, and people just aren't even aware of how much we're affected by it. And it's, I think, good for, there needs to be some people telling them about it, that there's a better way you can make your space. So that way your body will feel really good in the way. And I think that light helps out more than diet for your sleep and wakefulness.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Incandescent bulbs in particular had a lot, or halogen bulbs, well, not especially incandescent, had a lot of yellow in the color of the light that came out of incandescent. And so if you were to imagine standing in a perhaps a great room that has big windows and is so you can see the outside and you can stand in the inside, if with the incandescent bulbs on the inside in the middle of the day, that light would typically feel much yellower and warmer relative to the sunlight on the outside of the house. So you're one of the things that we've learned a lot about is that artificial lighting, if you're in an interior space where you do, that's part of why for a long time, I mean, I think as long as I've been in the industry, um, a lot of people have wanted lots of windows, and the reason is because of the biological impact of natural lighting. But there's a lot of homes, or even in the homes that have lots of windows, where you have interior spaces that either the project wasn't built with lots of natural light, or they don't have the ability to get the natural light in because it's an interior space. So for those rooms, you're just stuck with the artificial lighting, which
Yeah.
incandescent was kind of constantly soft and yellow. And so it's kind of a confused state for the body, where it's, you might be in the middle of the day, but you're in this kind of warm, relaxed light that doesn't make you feel very active and energized. Well, LED turned the page. With LED that as advanced as far as it has, we can call up yellower or cooler temperatures of white. And most people are familiar with big box stores, and you go down and you get the soft white
Yeah.
light, or you get the daylight, and you're kind of stuck with one or the other.
Yeah. And then now they have those ones with a dip switch, which is color select, where you can choose between 5000K and 3000, 2700K, all the way between, 5, 4, 35, 3000, 2700. I want to be clear for those listening, that's not tunable white. That is color select. You select it and install it. Your lights aren't going to automatically be able to adjust to match those different CCTs.
That's
That's
right.
something different. That's tunable white, and that's a technology on the light itself where it can tune to a control system and adjust throughout the day.
That's
Uh,
exactly right.
yeah. Gosh, there was something else I really wanted to say and hit the nail on, but that popped in my mind about lighting biology and our sleep and our wakefulness alert, because that's kind of a big one, I think, for it'll come back to me here, I think. But we have been talking a lot about, like, the controls, how it works, and the difference here. And we've talked about like the 5,000 square feet type home, and it's important even there. But a lot of what you guys do is, this really makes sense too, is luxury homes. How can this really benefit for a luxury? home and increase the value of their build when they're doing something like that, project that big.
Sure. So I'll recap. So that the minimum with a system in a luxury home is the improved quality of life, and that is realized from simple controls that call up different looks to the spaces very easily. So it's just reducing the amount of effort that it takes to live in that residence for the homeowner. It's also improving the aesthetic of the finished spaces. So getting rid of those wall acne banks of switches, and going to much more elegant plastic, glass, or metal keypads that have names that just make sense. So you get rid of all the, what does this switch do now? What does this dimmer do? You don't, that's all like a layer of complexity and just uh, difficulty that you remove when you have a control system. That's kind of the entry point of control system. But answering your question about what does this bring beyond that, I'll talk broad picture. So most luxury residences, there's a design team. So it's yourself, the lighting designer, the architect, the interior designer, and often other specialists who come in and work with the client to create really special, unique builds and spaces. So you've got these curated or custom great rooms with natural materials, woods, stones, textiles, and with architectural features and structural elements that, it's really bringing a vision. It's crafting a vision and bringing it to life. So you have all this effort that goes into the project from the client and the design team. So imagine, let's go back to our connected space example. So we have a great room, maybe in a dining room, perhaps a kitchen. In traditional builds 20, 25 years ago, you would put the lights in, and if there's no system, you're turning them on or off, maybe got some dimmers. If you have a system, you're just dimming those incandescent or halogen bulbs up or down. And you still get some, it can be a beautiful space, but you're limited in what you can do. So let's talk about what we can do today. So LED bulbs can be tuned. I mean, not all. A lot of them are just stuck with it's a cool white or a warm white. But the nicer lighting fixtures that often you're working with and specifying, you can actually tune them. So you can say, hey, I right now I want this bulb to output 2200 degrees Kelvin, which is fairly warm. Or right now I want this bulb to output 6500 degrees Kelvin. So very cool and lots of blue. And beyond that, a lot of these LED fixtures can also do color. So what we can do with that now, beyond the simplicity and improved quality of life, is we can take that beautiful vision that was delivered into the real world, that common area, instead of just having some, 2, 3 looks for that space, we can actually transform the space and make it feel like it is perhaps a dozen different rooms with what we can output from the lights. And we haven't talked a lot about yet, but most luxury projects also have art, or they have sculptures, or they have beautiful features or focal points. And we're able to change if you were to sit in that open space with what we can accomplish with the lighting today, and we're not going to get too technical. There's some really cool stuff that we can do, especially with art. You can make it feel like it is literally, they took that same open area and they built it 12 different times. And in each one of those 12 different, if you were to walk into each one of those 12s, it'd feel like 12 different rooms. And that happens with the push of a button, or it can happen automatically. Most of the time you push a button. So let's go back to your entertainment button that you mentioned. So most people would hear entertainment, they would imagine hosting a gathering or hosting a party or friends, perhaps a dinner party, perhaps it's more cocktail, or maybe it's an outdoor. You have these indoor-outdoor spaces with the big folding walls, and you've got a bunch of families over. So whatever you think of when you think of entertain, but perhaps we take that same entertain button and we push it 5 times, and every time you push it, you get 5 different looks. So maybe the first look is really
Oh,
big
cool.
grand event. We're hosting maybe a graduate. We're in graduation season right now. Maybe it's a graduation party, and we're going to have 55 people over for a big hosted graduation party. But maybe that's more generationally. Maybe it's a mix of young, middle aged, and older generations, and maybe that look and feel is different than if perhaps it's a young family or a young couple, maybe in their 30s, kind of at the peak of the vibrancy of life, and they're going to have 25 other young 30-ish people over, and they're looking for more of a vibe type of entertainment scene versus maybe the entertainment is more of a perhaps it's a paired wine and a dinner that is produced by a chef or a catering company. Maybe it's a catered dinner and a paired wine pairing where you have someone coming in and doing this course meal. Well, that pairing, that entertainment feel of the space is probably different than you want than if it's 30 young couples looking for kind of more of a vibey kind of LA feel. And so you can push that entertain 5 buttons and the space can morph into feeling like it's 5 different venues or five. So you take this beautiful design, this vision that the client and the designer have brought to life, and you can now deliver a dozen experiences of that vision with a
You're
potential.
bringing up a Yeah, you're bringing up a really good point too, because that's awesome with the controls. I didn't even realize with the controls now you can just push the same button and it toggles through the different scenes with that. That's great to hear. But lighting can dramatically affect the look and feel of the space when it's done correctly and you change the lighting. So if you have changeable, adjustable lights, you can change the whole entire feel of the space. It's pretty cool. Um, So then for those people listening, because I don't think we talked about really like those luxury type homes are probably like the 10,000 square foot homes to like 20,000 square foot or even bigger. Like I know we've worked on that one together. Um, that was very, very large and there's lots of statues and lots of art. They have all their art locations mapped out, lots of different layers to the light. Um, you want to create a different type of feeling within there, lots of beam lighting, all that up lighting. And if that home didn't have controls, it would be impossible.
You would never experience the full potential of the project, not the lighting. I mean, there's the lighting itself has a tremendous amount of potential. But when you think about the overall design, the project in its totality, without a a well specified design and implemented control system, you'll never experience the full potential of the project. And that is going back to the value. Why would people spend money on this? That represents a tangible value in that I'm spending money not because I want fancy buttons on the wall, but because I want to experience the full potential of this design that I've poured myself into and that the design team has poured into. We've sourced all these beautiful materials from often from around the world, and it's not even a lot of the luxury projects we work on are not even in 10,000 square feet and higher. Although we do quite a few of those, a lot of these are more boutique. Perhaps it's a second or a third home in the mountains or on a body of water, and it's a 5,000 square foot family retreat, but it's
Mhm.
a very high end escape for the
Mhm.
family. So it's a lot of the value of the system is leveraging the tremendous power of modern lighting to help realize the potential that your beautiful project has through these different curated experiences of it.
That's great. Yeah. And yes, I'm glad we touched on that. I wanted to bring that up while I was thinking about the luxury homes, but I did remember what I was talking about, thinking about. You reminded me when you're talking about the adjusting between the real warm 2700 to the real white 6500 when we're talking about biology. So I'm switching back here to biology. and the human body. And a lot of people out there, I think they listen to podcasts, they think that blue light is bad for you. I want to let them know, as far as my education goes and background in studying and lighting, and I know you know as well, that blue light is not bad for you. It's the time of day in which it's delivered. So we want that blue light when it's like even the bright 10,000 K, like the sunlight, when it's centered in the highest part of the day, you know, that's when we want that blue light is in the middle of the day. And then in the evening, when it gets real warm, it's mimicking the sunset. That's when we want that 3000 K, that 2700 K, or even I know you guys have can make them go warmer than that as long as I'm specifying in the right downlight. And I don't know, is there anything you want to add to that particular as well?
Yeah, I'll add two things. One is that the one of the things we haven't really clearly said is that it is beautiful. We talked about standing in that room with an incandescent bulb where it's bright blue sunlight outside. Well, the one of the capabilities that the new systems have is the ability to have when most of the time you're not going to have an entertainment scene running. I mean, most families, 80% of the time, they just want beautiful, elegant spaces with balanced lighting. So, and most of the time, that's based around white light, some variation of warm or cool white light. And so, for the typical day, what the systems bring the ability to do is to have that white light match what the sunlight out is. So if you think about standing next to that folding wall where you're inside the great room, maybe in, but you could open up that folding wall and have the inside and outside spaces connected. We can have the inside lights match the color temperature of the sun, whether it's warm and yellow or bright and vibrantly blue, so that you can't tell the difference where the outside ends and the inside starts. And the systems will follow the sun throughout the course of the day. So if you hit that bright button and it's 8 a.m. or it's 1 p.m. or it's 6 p.m., the inside lights will match whatever that color temperature of the outside light is.
That's a really good point because a lot of people automatically assume bright is the white light, but bright means lumen output, the amount of light being pushed out of the light itself. And then, so it would be a bright light at that 2700 color temperature. So it would be mimicking the sun at that 2700 K, but still a large amount of light so you can actually see what you're doing a lot
Yeah.
better.
And that's another value point. The value to that is because to your point, our bodies are so biologically tied to the sun for to be triggered for what we're supposed to be doing in the time of day. We can have that your inside light mimic the sunlight so that your body is getting the right cues throughout the course of the day, whether it's time to be active or it's time to settle down and prepare for rest. So that's a big value versus having your body being in these interior spaces where your body is getting a bit of a mixed or confused message because the color temperature of the light is saying, hey, let's relax. That's why people feel tired, maybe when they're working in an office that just has old school incandescent bulbs or soft white bulbs. They may feel tired after a while versus sitting in an office in the middle of the day that has the same color temperature light, white light that the sun is outputting.
Man, I'm so glad the conversation went this way because I geek out about this stuff, and I think a lot of people need to hear this, especially with like I feel like the lighting has become the Wild West, and there's no limit to what people sell or install, and it's kind of good for people to hear this and maybe understand it a little bit that it does kind of need to be mimic the sun. Otherwise, you're kind of confusing yourself and your system, your own internal clock.
The second point was specific to luxury residences. One of the things that's very exciting to me, most luxury residences have some art and sculptures and or sculptures or collections of some type. And sometimes it's as simple as family portraits, and a lot of times it's collections that reflect the taste of the client. But traditionally, and I'm sure done this for many years, you would take a light pointed at the art or the sculpture, and maybe it's dimmable, probably it's dimmable, and that's the experience of the art. It's great. The art's hanging on the wall or the sculpture is sitting there on the base. It's
Mhm.
highlighted, and but it always looks the same all the time. And today, one of the things that we do with systems is we can take the technology that's in modern lights, and just like we talked about transforming, taking that open space and making it feel like it's literally a dozen different spaces, like the design team created 12 different looks of the same thing. We can do the same thing with art and sculpture. We can take a piece of art, and with the lights, we can change the look and the experience of that art, and it can literally feel no change to the art, no change to the fixtures. It can just changing what's coming out of the lights with the system. We can make that art feel like it is 12 different pieces, which we've never been able to do before. Art has typically just shine a light on it, and that's how it looks. Today, that art can feel like it is 12 different art pieces with the push of a button.
100%. Yes. And I've seen that in action. And yeah, it's really cool. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you that maybe you want to get out there, kind of that you're thinking of?
I think I'm cautious to delve into the technical and start talking about all the cool things we can do because it starts to feel complex.
Yeah,
And that's part of why people retain us is to allow us to quietly behind the scenes just leverage our expertise. But we're very focused on the successful outcome is a happy client that has a system that they feel is simple to understand, easy to use, it's intuitive, and it enhances their quality of life by just making things easier. And then, and that what is proposed and delivered has significant actual value, tangible value. It's not just this kind of gimmicky thing that they added to have a cool widget. It actually is like, wow, we use this. It has changed the way we live. It's changed our experience of life as a family living in a house. And so our focus is to coming back to is to remain to never lose sight of, in spite of all the really amazing things that technology can do, to remain focused on simplicity, intuitive systems, quality of life, and things that bring value. So, one of the things that I didn't mention that is important consideration as well is that anytime we're doing control systems, we typically also want to have shades that are motorized so we can control the natural light.
mm,
So, if the sun is setting right on the west and it's right in through those giant great room windows and blowing everyone out, when we hit that afternoon or evening button, the lights can fade to the right color temperature. And then also the shades can drop maybe halfway to just block that direct glare. But that can all happen with that single button press. Shades are also important in lighting control systems.
that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so we'll get ready to close it out, but before maybe say there's an architect listening to this podcast, or maybe it's a contractor and they're building a home and they want really nice design. Or maybe it's a lighting designer and they've designed it. They need help with the controls and they want to make this look and this feel and capture this environment. How can they get a hold of you?
Sure. I mean, for us specifically, QNorthwest.com. It's the letter Q and Northwest spelled out, all one word, QNorthwest.com. Um, but a lot of lighting designers have manufacturers that they like to work with. Those manufacturers are also often connected or partnered with control companies, and they can recommend providers. Um, Definitely, I think the only thing I would add, there's a lot of good providers. There's also a lot of providers who say, "Hey, we do control systems," and at the end of the day, if the system is not simple, it's not intuitive, it's not easy to understand and operate, then it's a lose for everyone, especially the client. They spent money on this system, and we can't end up with complex things. So definitely vet your provider, and end up with a good provider. Just because someone says on their website they do lighting control systems or control systems in general, sometimes they don't have the depth of experience and working knowledge to deliver that simplicity and that value at the end of the day.
And I can vouch for what Andrew's saying because I've worked for him and I've seen other uh, of those companies that he's mentioning. And yeah, Andrew is very professional, very they're gonna follow, cross all their T's, dot all their I's, and make sure everything's gonna work in that system. And then they'll be able to actually help monitor it after the fact and jump in and fix it when it's needed to, if there's something wrong. And they're gonna make sure everything is working really, really well. And you guys have access to multiple lighting control manufacturers as well, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for Q Northwest, we carry hundreds of different lines in technology systems. Today, we've just been talking about lighting control, but we do a lot of other technology things. We're more of a total solution provider for these. You can't just have the lighting control live in its own world. It's got to, everything aesthetically, from the keypads on the wall and the speakers and the shades, it's all got to fit together and be this beautiful experience for the client. So we work in all those fields. We carry hundreds of lines from different manufacturers. They're selected. We don't just carry anyone. They're lines that we have experience with, that we know how they're going to perform, and we know how to properly specify, design, and implement them. So, wherever you're at, definitely make sure you connect with a provider who's going to deliver that value for the client at the end, and a system and a solution that is complete, and it's simple and it's intuitive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andrew, I can't thank you enough for joining me today and doing the podcast with me. Your wealth of knowledge, and it's good to hear all this. And I'm very, very excited to put this out there.
Great. Well, thank you,
Yeah,
Travis. I appreciate the invitation, and have a great rest of your week.
yeah. Thanks. You
All right.
too. All right, guys, that was our interview with Andrew Miller with Q Northwest. Yeah, feel free to reach out through the website and and we'll put the link in the show notes as well, so that way you guys can grab it. And for those of you who are interested in lighting design and what we do, that's what we do. This is our Centric Lighting podcast, and we also offer lighting design services through TK Lighting Design. And we've worked with Andrew and other custom integrators before in the past. And it's a full scale architectural lighting design and drafting where we take your architect's plans and his, preferably their 3D model, whether that's Revit or SketchUp, and we take it and we create our own set of plans, and then we do photometrics on it to make sure you're getting the right amount of light, the right spaces, and we're also specifying in all the product, calling out all the types, the part numbers, the dimming, the lumen output, the CCT, the optics, and all that to make sure it's the right type of light for the right spaces. We're going through and looking at all the ceiling heights and the finishes and everything like that, picking that through so we can create that feeling, that environment that we were talking about that's going to make your home look and feel good and align with your biology. So if that's something that interests you, please head to our website as well. That's www.tklightingdesign.com, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. Feel free to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you guys have a great rest of your day. See ya.